if you think about this, it's quite logical. The things that live close to you grow there for a reason because they're exposed to the same weather and the same stuff you're exposed to. So if you eat the things that have been grown in the same places and the sunlight that you are exposed to, it is going to help you to heal more quickly. It's going to help your body more potently. And it's going to be better for your body because your body is used to that region. Your body is experiencing things in those regions. And believe it or not, plants, because they experience those same things, they're hardier and they pick up the minerals that they need. They'll pick up extra nutrients. They'll do things to make themselves extra hardy. And guess what? You need that because that's what you are being exposed to every day.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Beringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. This is Jaye, and we've got Julie Dean Richards on. Say hello.
Hello.
Oh my gosh. Today, we're going to talk about something that Julie and I are crazy passionate about. We are talking about plant allies and what herbalism means to us and how we work with herbs. And this is just going to be so fun. So fun. But for our get to know you question, we always have to have a good one. And Julie came up with an excellent question, which is, what is one of your favorite plant allies that you like to work with and why?
So mine is not going to be as exciting. Every plant is exciting, but mine is an old faithful and it's going to be lavender. Which everyone's like, everyone works with lavender. Lavender is in everything, but I actually have a really special relationship with lavender. I would say that it's one of those plants that did not always call to me. And at first, I used to hate that everything had lavender in it. I used to be like, why does every lotion have lavender? I don't even really like the smell as much. But then over time, after the birth of my third child, I started to feel so much calmness from lavender. It started to call to me and started to be such a blessing. And I love it because I love the smell. I love the strength that it gives and that it's just there. It's an old faithful for a reason. Like it's there in the background because it's steady, because it's secure. And I think that's what I need at this moment is kind of that stability. What about you, Jaye?
I was just going to say I love this about what you're saying about lavender because I always think of lavender as being like old hat too. And then somebody I know had a really bad headache, and I was just doing a nice gentle temple massage with lavender essential oil, and she was like in another world all of a sudden, and it was just so powerful. And I thought it was like, I'm doing nothing. I wasn't doing nothing. The work that we do with plants, the work we do with energy medicine is super powerful, but because it's so accessible, we just assume that it's nothing. So that is what we want you to learn today for sure. Beforehand, I was like, I can't even think of any plants as outside of kava. For some reason, when we were like prepping to get on and start talking, Julie was like, okay, well, you got to come up with your favorite plant. And all that could come into my mind was kava. So, which is one of the more exotic ones. It's not grown everywhere. Kava is a really good muscle relaxer for the entire body. I once gave it to a friend of mine in tincture form, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is like Xanax. I was like, yes. And it doesn't mess with your mind. It just allows your muscles to relax very, very well. And I just am shocked every time how fast it works and how immediate and how dramatic it can be when I'm working with it. So all that to say, there's a lot of disclaimers First of all, don't just blindly use plants that we think are cool. Check in with them. And we're going to show you on this episode how you can check in with your body and with the plant to make sure that this is in fact going to help you. And we're going to talk about why that's important. When we are working with herbs, we are working with living plants. So Julie, tell us about how do you collect plant allies? Why do we call them plant allies? What is important about the ally portion of that? And that's not just a euphemism for like, these are plants I use. What does that look like? What does that feel like for you? And yeah, what are we doing here?
I think the word ally is really appropriate and really important here. So we're not just replacing herbalism, and there's different types of herbalism, right? I think lots of times we think about herbalism as a 1-to-1 ratio with your Western medicine with here is a pill for every ill. This will cure you. Just take this plant and it will cure everything. And that's not what we are talking about. That's not what I would say using plant allies or like true herbalism is not just here you have these symptoms, let's mask the symptoms and give you this plant and use whatever we want. The ally piece is actually looking at plants as if they are living beings and using them that way. So that's seeing as like a plant has a spirit, like lots of people would think about animals have spirits or other people have spirits. And so plants are also living beings. They also communicate. And this isn't just like in the woo-woo way of like plants talk to you in this woo-woo way, but there are actually legitimate studies we've been able to do with plants that show that they do communicate, and not just through smells. They also communicate through sound waves. And we've been able to show this multiple times. Plants do communicate. So there's something more to plants than just they're there and we can step on them and do whatever and they don't have any thoughts or feelings. They actually are communicating all the time. So using a plant as an ally is seeing it as something that's living and being like, okay, because it's living, I'm going to treat it with respect like I would treat an animal with respect. And I'm going to ask and talk to it, like being willing to go that extra mile to feel into energetically. Is this plant actually right for me? Does it want to work with me? Should I work with this plant? And using it with that respect. Do you have more? I'm sure you have more to say on that, Jan, but that's a good start, I think.
Yeah, just anecdotally, I realized that this past summer, as I've been gardening and as I've been kind of processing different emotions and things, I started to realize that as I go outside to work with my plants, I start to remember where I had left off as if they had asked me, hey, how's that thing going? And it was so natural. I thought it was my own thoughts that I was just like, this is when I think about these things, like this is just an automatic function, which part of it may have been, but the other part I recognized later it was the plants were like, hey, how are you doing with that? How is that thing going? What else are you mad about? And all of these things were coming out. And it's not that I was like putting all my junk on them per se, but they were asking me about it. And again, I have this most bountiful garden with like 4 square feet of space. And it kind of just sort of, they tell me, okay, we're done with this part of the garden experience. They tell me, okay, this has finished now. Even like the day before, I would be like, oh, no, we're going to be going on forever with these tomatoes. They're going to come. And then the very next day, he's like, no, cut this off, please. I'm done. It's over. Or now you need to plant the next generation. Those kinds of things were coming through. And at first I thought it was just my own brain. And I'm realizing now more and more it is the plants telling me, okay, time for the next thing. Hey, I've got something that's itchy. Can you take care of that? Look at that. I found some bugs, those kinds of things. What I've seen with medicinal plants, that's food plants, but what I've seen with medicinal plants is that it's a much more slow going process. And every book I've read is that you get to know one plant. You go out into its native environment and you sit there and wait for a plant to come and reach out to you energetically, right? And I'm not even talking about, oh, take some plant medicine and the plants will start. No, you just sit there quietly releasing your thoughts in meditation and there will be a plant that will start to talk to you. And that's the plant, one plant you work with for a full year. That is the one plant you talk to for a full year. That is the one plant that you don't even pick it. You just communicate with it, because plant allies are about working with the living spirit of the plant. There are stories of the old herbalists where they would use a single plant for every type of ailment. And most notably, it's, what is that one? Ginseng, American ginseng, which was over harvested because the herbalists were using it for one thing. And then everybody goes, oh, ginseng's the answer. No, it was that herbalist had a special relationship with ginseng, and ginseng could be used in many different ways because of the spiritual side of things and not necessarily only because of the chemical constituents. So that is the key takeaway. If you learn nothing else from herbalism, work with one plant, communicate with one plant, and that plant will show you other things. That plant will maybe then introduce you to its friends, but you have to create that relationship with the same plant. So that's my soapbox on that.
I think it's really beautiful to think about it that way, because it's more like we're making friends and your friends are there to help you, right? In real life, when you cultivate relationships, it takes time to actually cultivate that relationship. And you can't just go to someone all the time and be like, give me this, give me that, do this for me, do that for me. You have to cultivate an actual relationship. And of course, the chemical compounds of plants are used all over and can be very helpful. I'm sure lots of people listening have had many experiences where they've been able to use something like a salve or a tincture, or take a plant as via a like in pill form, and it helps you. Yes, it will help you, but the idea behind this is it's more than just taking something to take something to fix something. It's more about having an actual relationship. And when you do this, like Jaye said, then the plant works better for you because you actually have a relationship with this plant. It helps you and is more like your friend and able to lend you support. Like, think about, we all have people we recommend because we love them and we've worked with them so much. We have a relationship with them. They're able to help us more because we've worked with them and we have an actual relationship with that person. Think about that in the way of plants. Let's say it's like a massage therapist. If you go to someone you don't know, you might be able to have like a great massage or a great cranial sacral therapy session or something like that. But it changes the relationship completely when that person is deeply invested in you and they're your actual friend. So if we apply that to the plants as well, thinking about them as living beings, the same way that we might think about animals, your dog knows you and loves you. And so the plant in the same way can know you and love you and heal you even more and on a deeper level. And you can do more for the plant by cultivating that relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into the way that the medical institution uses constituents of plants, because let's be honest, most medications, most medicines have plant origins and have been refined and maybe a little bit molecularly doctored. What's the difference between using medication and using herbs?
Yeah. So when we use a medication, most of the time it's to mask a symptom or to take care of a symptom. So you have a headache, you go get over the counter, maybe ibuprofen, something like that. You take it and then it takes the pain of the headache away. However, most medications are not made to deal with the root of a problem. They're made to, like I said, mask symptoms. And that's important, right? We need stuff like that. There are times you're like, I'm in so much pain, I can't function. Of course, you need pain medications, or I need to be able to breathe through my nose and I need a medication to help me breathe through my nose and at this time. So it's not that it's not needed, but when it comes to herbalism, we're trying to do more than just mask symptoms. We're trying to get to the bottom and the root of what's going on with you. And oftentimes there's more of an emotional component than we realize, or an energetic component that we realize. So when we work with plants rather than plants that have been kind of doctored and turned into pharmaceuticals, we are able to address both the emotional and the energetics, as well as more of the roots of the problem. So that's why some people will say plants don't work. Herbalism doesn't work. It's a sham because I took this one time, say it was whatever, rose hip, turmeric, whatever it is. I took it one time and it didn't take away the thing. It didn't take away my symptom. Well, plants are not meant to do that all of a sudden. It's not at the snap of our fingers that these things happen. It takes time. It takes weeks and months of you using and working with the plant properly, because that plant is not just stopping your symptom. It's going down to the root and it's doing a lot of work and healing energetically. And then, of course, when it comes to herbalism, we're actively working with something that has a living spirit and that is from nature. So every compound you get, like every tincture you get, is going to be unique. If people don't know what a tincture is, that's where you can use glycerin or alcohol, and you basically use that to extract the medicine from the plant, and then you can take that later. So they come in little vials, and they're usually liquids, and you can use a dropper and take them via a dropper. Let's say you get 2 tinctures from Earthly or something. You might find that both of them do not work the same, or they tend to have different outcomes, or it's not as powerful, or maybe they're more powerful because those plants are unique. Each plant is unique. Everything that's being used is unique. So it's not going to have 100% the same results. Whereas something like a pharmaceutical, you can count on it to be almost always the same because it's the same process. It's a chemical process. So that's the difference between something that's synthetic and something that's living, is you're always going to get a little bit of different outcomes. Do you have more you want to add to that, Jan?
Yeah. The other part of it is the mindset thing. When we're looking at molecular constituents only, right? That's what pharmaceuticals is doing. And the mindset of the medicine world is we've diagnosed it, we've identified a prognosis, and now we have a protocol. And the protocol doesn't have any bearing on the person per se. It has to do with the symptoms and the diagnosis. So when we come at it from an herbalism standpoint, we're not going, okay, I've diagnosed you and you have X, Y, and Z. We're going, you have this cluster of symptoms. Tell me more about this. Tell me more about this. And then our plant friends come in and tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, I think I can help with this. I think I can help with that, which is really difficult to empirically reproduce with just plain protocols. And that's the struggle, I think, that anyone in the allopathic world, which is the true name for medical doctors, anyone in the allopathic world, they think very, very linearly and very structurally, like, this is what I have to do in order to get the result. And if I don't get the result, then I go on to the next iteration of things I need to do. It's hard to go and say, all right, now let's bring intuition into that. There's some there, right? You could say, like, I don't think this first step in the protocol is going to work, so we're going to skip to the other one. And that's why we have all these specialists. But when we are working with herbs, we're not going one diagnosis, one protocol, it doesn't work, shrug, good luck. Like, there is so much more to it, and we have to treat the whole person, right? If you've ever seen K-pop Demon Hunters and the guy goes in and we must treat the whole. Yes, that's what we're working at, because when you have a dysfunction in an emotional area, it can show up as physical. When you have a dysfunction in a physical area, it can show up as emotional, right? Everything shows up in many places. And the plants have many more layers of where they're addressing. So are you going to take echinacea and go, okay, you've got a cold. Echinacea is going to stop your sinus overflow. No, that's not what we're talking about. It's not one symptom, one medicine. What we're talking about is we're addressing multiple layers of issues inside of one plant that said, hey, I can help with this. I hope that made sense. It's a totally different mindset.
Yeah, no, it's actually so perfect. We're not dividing the body up into different sections and saying, this is only the head thing, this is only an eye thing, this is only an ear thing. Your body works all together. And I'll just give like one tiny anecdote about this. I'm sure other people have experienced this, but for example, when my back is really tight, right? My hips are super, super tight, and I'm trying to work with my hips, and I might just massage around the area that feels tight. And I can do that. I can massage around it. But if I actually massage my whole back, the other muscles, oftentimes I find that actually by releasing my upper back, my lower back is all of a sudden better. Or by working on my tush and working on the back of my legs, oh my gosh, it loosened my lower back, because all of those muscles are connected. Everything's connected, all the ligaments, tissues. And in the same way, when we work with plants, it's not just a one for one. Oh, you are having trouble with your cough. Let me give you mullein for that. You can have mullein for your cough, and that's going to do everything for you. No, I might need more or less, or we're looking not just at this one cough, we're looking at, okay, well, where did this cough start? Why did it start? Was there an emotional fight that you had with someone where you felt like you didn't have a voice? Is that the thing? Did you feel like you couldn't breathe? Something happened to you and all of a sudden you couldn't breathe and now you've developed this cough. So there's going to be emotional components, energetic components, and other physical components, not just your lungs, but let's look at other pieces of your body, what's going on with them. So I think that's beautiful, Jan. And that's why when we look at herbalism, we say, oh, herbs don't work. We can't look at it like that. We have to look at the whole one thing, Dr. Low Dog, I cannot remember her first name, but her last name is Low Dog. She is an indigenous Native American doctor, but she also has a medical degree. She went to medical school and she does amazing work around this. And one of the things that she taught me was that, Western medicine is very heroic. It's heroic medicine. And what she meant by that was, we're always kind of in this hyper crisis mode, which is what you see on TV all the time, right? We watch things like ER, we watch Grey's Anatomy, and there always has to be this emergency. And the hero has to go in and do things in the moment right now. And she gave the example of she was in surgery and they came in and said, do you want to give this patient nutrition? This is like a 12-hour surgery. And the doctor was like, oh, they don't need that. We just need to focus on getting this, whatever it was, this out of their body. We needed to focus on cutting them open and doing what we're doing. And she said, it's the complete opposite of the feminine way of medicine and herbalism, which is, it's not as exciting, right? Herbalism, it's not as exciting to be like, yes, over the next 3 months, we're going to work with this plant little by little. We're going to give you some nutrition. Cause she said, what about that person? That person, they're cut open. Of course they need the nutrition too. They need that to vitalize their body, but we're so focused on the cutting, the exciting part, that we leave behind these other beautiful pieces. And partially because they are more feminine and allopathic medicine is more masculine. And that's just, you need both, right? But that's why with, herbalism and other medicines that are more feminine, it's going to be, how do we do this beforehand? How do we help you with your lifestyle, with your diet, and with these herbs? And it's going to take a long time and it's going to be little by little. So it's going to look like not a lot is happening in the first couple weeks, but you'll see the huge changes that come in time.
I love that you said it's heroic. I want to point out and highlight that allopathic medicine was born on the battlefield. That is the purpose of allopathic medicine. It is very masculine. It is entirely about saving lives. The problem with that is when it's the feminine side of healing, we're not talking about saving lives. We're talking about little things every day. And things that make a huge difference over time, yes, but it's not that instantaneous hit of excitement, adrenaline, and heroism, because that's what the battlefield medicine is all about. So if we can recognize that and start to parse it out in our minds and say, that's what they're doing and that's why they're doing it, and there's this big piece that's missing that I can also integrate into my life, then we can see how there is a beauty in both sides of that coin. So what we're getting at here, though, is we're not trying to, first of all, replace allopathic medicine. That's not relevant. We also don't want to take the mindset, that masculine mindset of allopathic medicine, and bring it into herbalism. That's the difference. That's the biggest difference. Do not do that. It's not going to be as effective in that instance because it is more builds over time, works on multiple layers, and less like instantaneous, right? Like broken bones. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I can fix broken bones right now. I can't. No herbs that I'm going to do are going to do that right now. Get it set correctly. And the same thing goes with very acute infections. When we're talking about chronic issues, that's where this problem that we've been talking about for this entire year is all about, is that chronic stuff. The people who have chronic illnesses, the people who have chronic problems with allergies or stuff that's like, I can't quite put my finger on it. Everybody tells me I'm crazy, but I'm not really sure what's going on. There's something, I know it. That's what this kind of medicine is all about. So, the other thing that I want to bring in here is, herbs don't work. And one of the problem with that is how they're prepared is wrong relative to the plant. So we need to talk about different preparation types, but also echinacea is one that really gets me. Everybody is taking echinacea powder and it's the freaking leaf. And the part where the medicine is in the root. But, you can go buy, $27 leaf powders in capsule form and then go, well, it didn't do anything. And then, oh, we're going to do some research on the leaf capsule. And it does because it's in the root, guys. And this happens all the time with different medicines. I've heard the same thing about nettles. Somebody was like, oh, I did a whole bunch of nettles and it didn't do the thing that I was trying to do. Well, what part did you take? The root? That doesn't do anything. All of the minerals are in the leaf. So you have to know some of these things, and otherwise they're just selling you snake oil. That's the real problem, is if you don't know what you're doing, then you can get taken for a ride because it's the wrong part of the dang plant. But let's talk about different type of plant preparations and what that means, because I know that it seems very daunting to crack open an herbalism book because those are tomes, but let's get some real clear basics on what preparation of a plant looks like and why you would use one versus another.
Perfect. I love everything you're saying because I think the same things all the time. I will tell people this is not a hard and fast rule, but it is a rule that is helpful if you're in a pinch and you don't know much about a plant, is we should always think about timing. So, for example, when do plants start to reseed into their roots? They start to do that in the fall and the winter. And in the fall and the winter is when the roots are going to be more potent for a plant, because that's where the energy is. All the energy is not in the leaf and the stem. It's going to be in the roots. And then opposite of that is going to be spring and summer. Where's all the energy in the plant? It's going to be in the leaves, in the stems, in the flower. So when we're using a plant and we want to get the specific properties of that plant and work with it, we need to be mindful of what's the time of year, when was it harvested. If it's harvested in the winter, that's going to tell you, oh, probably the root is probably going to be the best for me right now. If it's harvested in the summertime, then probably the leaves are going to be more useful to me. So it's just something to think about as we're preparing these plants, and specifically, and there'll be specific plants like Jan talked about, like nettle. Nettle is harvested during those summer months. And of course, its energy is going to be in those leaves, right? Where other things will be harvested later in the fall, it's all going to be in that root. So being careful about that is one thing. But there are lots of different ways to prepare and use a plant. So you might hear like, oh, take it in a tea. So a tea, everybody probably is familiar with what a tea is, but you can use different parts of the plant and you can either dry them or you can use them fresh, and you put them in hot water and it boils. And as it boils, then you're extracting some of the medicine out of that plant. That's one way to work with it. And then you drink it later. So that's the simplest preparation that we have. But there's other things you can do, like emulsions. You can do tinctures, you can do decoctions. But let's talk about the most common ways. So the first thing people might be familiar with as a common way to use plants as medicine is a salve. Lots of times you use an emulsion to get a salve, but a salve is the physical thing. It's like it will look kind of more like a lotion or a paste. And what happens with a salve is you're using that plant, either mashing it up or putting it in something like an oil, and you let the oil sit for a long time and the oil extracts the medicine of the plant, and you add it with things like beeswax and olive oil, and you put them together, and then you have what's called a salve, which looks kind of like a lotion. So that's probably the most common. And of course, you're going to use a salve on physical irritations that you have. So you can use a salve if you have a cut. You can use a salve if you have a rash. That's when you use salves. So Jan, do you want to talk a little bit about tinctures and decoctions next?
Yeah. I will say that I've used a salve on a spider bite, instantaneously made it all better. Like I would have gotten infected. It wasn't like a black widow or something, but just a regular spider bite. It was like a huge welt, and I put a salve on it and poof, it was gone. So this stuff works, man. I like decoctions. Decoctions are usually used for the hardier parts of the plant, whether it's a stem or a root or bark. Because what you're doing is you're kind of simmering it for a long time. The best way for me, honestly, to do that is to put it in a crock pot with some water and you just let it do its thing. I like to do long-term decoctions. Like I just made one for grief. I like to do those for things that are clearly energetic and physical, but there's just so many layers to it. And so when you're using a decoction, you're really drawing out those constituents in a very slow period of time and allowing that to come forward. And it's pulling parts of the plant out that don't normally get touched, right? If you're going to sit there, let a tea sit for 3 to 5 minutes, there's these deeper layers of the plant that aren't going to come through that will definitely come through in a decoction. One of my favorite decoctions is angelica root because it's got a lot of energetically protective properties. I don't even remember its physical properties, but it's really a soothing for the soul kind of energetic. And it smells like curry powder, which I think is interesting. Do you have any favorite decoctions or how do you use decoctions?
I think decoctions are really important, like you said, for drawing out the deeper stuff. So you want to use that for like deep inside pain. That's why it works great for grief, like Jaye is talking about, because you're going to get that deep stuff. And I guess I should have said about teas, Jan mentioned this, but teas are useful, but you're going to have to take them multiple times. So people are always like, oh no, I have to use red raspberry leaf tea 4 times a day. Yes, you have to drink it to get the benefit of the tea. You have to drink it on kind of a regimen like that. 3 cups a day, and you'll see that in places like Japan where they highly value and prize tea. They will drink their teas literally 3 times a day. They have their specific regimen on it to heal certain things. So because a tea is not getting as deep into the plant, that's why we have to use it multiple times for different things. And they're actually great. Teas are really great for things that you don't want to get too invasive with, I would say, that you want to work with over time. So like red raspberry leaf, we know tones the uterus and works really well for menstrual pain and cramping. And so you want to do that kind of in a way where you're doing it multiple times, either a day or during a week, and you use that throughout the month because that's going to help you constantly work with your uterus. Whereas a decoction, because it's really deep and really hardy, at least in my experience, you don't need to take a decoction every day. That's not something for everyday use. It's for deeper use. So we're healing something, and it's going to be a smaller dose than you're going to get. Like a whole cup of tea is a bigger dose. A decoction, you're going to take like a milliliter or a smaller amount over time. And so I think Angelica is really lovely for that. I have one that was specifically for the liver. So using milk thistle, really deep stuff with that dandelion root, boiling those for a long time, pulling it out. Like Jan said, a crock pot is perfect for that. And taking those to cleanse my liver has been really powerful for me. Any other thought about decoctions? You want to talk about tinctures?
No, I don't think so. A lot of these too, like decoctions, you can stabilize as a syrup and put it in the freezer. Because if you make a large quantity and you don't need all that much, like you save it for later. Oh, and the other thing is a decoction on the fun side of things can also be a simmer pot, right? And so if you're using these like fun, joyful things that have a lot of smell to them in your decoction, it's also doubling as like a simmer pot, which is just kind of like a magical thing. So the kitchen witchery is strong here.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
All right. So tinctures, what do you do with tinctures and how are they made? Most times you're not going to make your own tincture unless you're doing a lot of wild crafting yourself for very specific plant types, but you're going to see them in the health food stores. And the reason we want to know why are we seeing them in the health food stores and what do we do with them?
Yes. Okay. So the tincture is probably the closest to a 1-for-1 when people think about medicine, like take this thing, this remedy, because it's quite potent. So as I said before, tinctures are usually made in alcohol or glycerin, but you're soaking the plant for a very long time. So most of the time, depending on the plant, it's usually going to be about 4 weeks. And so what will happen is you'll take that alcohol, and this alcohol is not like regular alcohol. We're talking like Everclear clear, something that's like really strong, like 50% proof or something like that. Or a glycerin. You can do that if you don't want to have alcohol in it, or you're doing it for a small child, or you're pregnant like me and you're avoiding alcohol. But you're going to take that strong proof, you're going to put the plant into it, and then you're going to shake it up once a day, usually for about 4 weeks. You can do it as little as 1 week, but it's definitely something you put in your fridge, you take it out each day, you shake it up, you put it back, and by the end you have really potent medicine, which is why probably most people's replacement for like a drug, or something that you might take, a pill, because it's really, really potent. Like I said, you're going to take like a dropper full. So each one will, if you buy it at the store, it will tell you, 2 dropper fulls or 1 dropper full, whatever you need. And the reason these are also so sought after is because they last forever. They last
Yeah.
for, like you can keep a tincture in forever because it's that alcohol, right? Or that glycerin. It's very well preserved. And so that's another reason most people have tinctures in their cabinet, is because you don't have to go get them every month or whatever. You can keep it for years and years. So you might take that for acute stuff. Most of the time people take tinctures for acute remedies. So when I say acute, for people who don't know what that means like very sharp, something that's on the edge, really potent, right? How would you describe acute, Jayan?
It's an immediate, instant, in this moment issue. It's not an under the skin, underlying long term thing. Tinctures are really powerful, and I love that they're shelf stable. They're easy to carry. They're easy to use. There's a lot of the plant potency inside of a small amount of volume. So you're not drinking vats and vats of liquid like you are with tea. Different preparation, different need, right? So if you're having a stomach issue and pain, you're going to use the tincture versus a tea. You might use tea for a stomach issue, but if the tea is not doing the thing you want it to do, you're going to upgrade to a tincture. And then probably even more potent would be the decoction, as we were talking about. So you kind of go up the level, but yeah, the tincture is the easiest way to find a strong potency in a small volume. And so you do want to be mindful of that. It is very strong. Don't drink half a bottle of it and expect to be fine after that. That's not great.
Yeah, for sure. So like I go to a lot of births and we carry tinctures to birth. So for example, Angelica and Shepherd's Purse are usually known for helping with things like releasing the placenta and helping you not to hemorrhage. And so we will use a tincture like that because it's so acute. It's really quick. It will get to the issue very fast. Where we might use something like a tea if, like I said, for menstrual cramping or for cramping later after the birth, after birth cramping, you could use a tea to help you in those issues. So yeah, the tincture is super great. Most people have a lot of them. When you take them, just for people who know, especially if it's an alcohol tincture, you're going to want to put that tincture in a little bit of water before you put it in your mouth. Like, yes, you can shoot it if you want to, but I would have a chaser. And also just like you might want to dilute just a little bit because it will burn your throat. Because remember, this is not just like 1% alcohol or even 7% alcohol. This is like 50% real deal alcohol. So, I get like just a tiny bit of water and then I put my tinctures in that and then I will take it. It's much more comfortable that way.
Yes, if you're not used to shooting shots, don't do it. Just drink it in a cup with water. I think it's really funny. The kava in the tincture form is completely clear. And then when you put it in the water, it turns white immediately. So it's like really weird. Yeah, and it'll make your tongue numb. I made my own echinacea tincture, but my hands went numb when I was cutting up the echinacea for this tincture. How wild is that? Echinacea is powerful stuff, man.
Super powerful.
Yes. And when I use the spray, it has a numbing effect. So it's perfect for sore throats.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how I did that.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and you can use a tincture and turn it into a spray if you would rather do that for things like numbing, like Jan said. But I think those are the big I would say those are the big 4 preparations of
I will say
plants.
infusions are fun because I don't, if you've been in herbalism circles for any amount of time, you've probably heard of Susan Weed. She's a big proponent for infusions as a kind of like a daily nutrient medicine in a sense. You take the nettle and you put it in the water, boiling water overnight, and so it's absorbing stuff. The water is pulling out the constituents for 12 hours, not a full decoction because you're not actively heating it, but you're letting it steep for much longer than you would a tea. And there's been like really powerful studies on the mineral content of infusions. Now, you only use specific types of plants for other reasons, but generally speaking, it's like really powerful stuff. I want to get into there are 2 kinds of plants. There's plants you want as nutritive plants, and then there's plants you want to do stuff. You want them to take control a little bit and take action. And I think that people get very nervous about plants because they're thinking that all the plants are that second category. All the plants are that I'm gonna make my body do stuff category. There's like a vast majority of the plants that we're working with, they're actually just for nutritive properties. It's more powerful than taking a multivitamin or multimineral instead of thinking of it as like, all right, I'm taking a decongestant. So what are some plants that in your mind that are more nutritive? And then I think that also some of the preparations lend themselves to one or the other as well.
For sure. Nettle was the first one that
Yeah,
came to mind because
that's what I was
you
thinking
were
of.
talking about it. Nettle has so many vitamins and minerals. It's useful for everything. It's a perfect prenatal, if that vitamin form. I would also say, though, think about your kitchen. What do you use in your kitchen all the time? You're using plants. So, rosemary and thyme, even though I will say rosemary and thyme and everything that you use in your kitchen does double, it does have medicinal properties. Of course, thyme is great, antimicrobial, antibacterial. It does great things. So is rosemary. That's why if you go to, whatever, doTERRA, or you get some kind of blend that's like the immune system essential oil blend, it will likely have some stuff you recognize from your kitchen, like rosemary or thyme in it, or cinnamon, right? We eat cinnamon all the time. We never think about that as a plant with properties. It does have healing properties, and it also has nutritive properties. So we are dealing with those all the time, and we don't need to be scared of plants because we're eating them. But think also about plants that you eat all the time, like spinach. Spinach has nutrition in it as a plant. Kale, it has nutrition in it, and you eat it as a plant. But it can all those things can also be medicines and are helping you with that nutrition. One that most people probably don't know, but I want to mention because it's in America, it's everywhere, and we never use it, is purslane. And purslane looks like you'll see it growing out of cracks of sidewalks, and you probably shouldn't eat that one because if it's growing out of a sidewalk, it's probably getting lead from the sidewalk, from the stuff they made to in the asphalt or whatever it is. But purslane is usually that stuff you see that's growing out of the cracks in sidewalks, and it's a little bit more when you touch it, it feels a tiny bit like a succulent. It's not quite a succulent, but the leaves are a little bit richer that way, a little bit more potent. But man, that thing, purslane has everything in it. It has all kinds of vitamins that you can use. And I promise you, wherever you are, you've got some growing somewhere because they're everywhere. And then I guess this one is something you do want to do for you as well, but it is nutritive. But dandelion is another one everyone will have everywhere. Everyone has got dandelion, but it can also give you lots of nutrition, like dandelion greens, right? Instead of using the root is more of that, okay, I'm trying to clean out my liver, or I'm trying to do something for my body. But the actual leaves have a lot of nutrition in them that we can use. What are you thinking about, Jan?
I love this. Yeah, this dichotomy of food as medicine and really potent medicinal plants also being highly potent nutritive plants. Like, let's talk about that for sure. Purslane is actually tasty too. It looks like this little succulent that grows out of nothing, but it really tastes good. When you fry it up, it's like got this tartness to it that you can't find anywhere else. So good. Another one that is really funny, is lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarter is a weed. Everybody thinks it's a weed, but it grows in these sort of like basket cup looking shapes. I don't know. Just Google a picture of lamb's quarters, but it's as powerful as spinach. It's as nutritive as spinach. And I went to an herbalism conference one time. This lady was like, I don't understand why everybody's ripping out the lamb's quarters and then they're planting spinach. They have no idea that the lamb's quarter is doing the same thing as the spinach. And it's a much milder flavor too. So that's another good one. But yeah, nettle is very nutritive. Who else is nutritive? Oh, milky oats. I like milky oats, but also the oat grass itself is the actual oat leaf, the grass. They
Mhm.
dry it out and you make a tea with it. You can get so much nutrients out of that. And so when I tell people, here, have this herbal tea, and they go, oh, hold on, I don't know if I agree with herbalism. I'm like, okay, if I took spinach and dried it and gave it to you in a powder, would you be worried? No, that's the same thing I'm doing with this nettle, because you don't want to pick nettle. It hurts. And you don't want to go find where it lives. So here it is in a powder. Here it is in a tea that you can drink. It's like we can make a tea out of spinach too. It's just a lot of work for no reason there to me. Anyways. So
Yeah.
those are some like nutritive stuff, and the vast majority of what we're looking at is high nutrition, low plant volume. That's
Yeah.
what we're really looking for. You can take a lot of these in a powder form. I think it's really important that we be able to taste our medicine. I
Yeah.
think that is a top priority. When we taste it, we're training the body to say this is how this is what it is going in, and this is the signal, and then you see on the effect, and the body can start to make those connections. When we take it in capsule form, we don't give the body that feedback loop. So I am not against capsules, but I do think it's really important to be able to taste your medicine, especially if you're working with new plants.
Yep. And a lot of it actually tastes really good. We always think about like plants tasting bitter, and sometimes they do,
Okay,
but they
dandelion tastes better. I don't care how you make it.
yeah, that's true. Dandelion does taste bitter, but a lot of them do taste good, or they're enhancing if you use them in a dish. So like think about something like turmeric. Everybody uses it. It's very potent, but we put it in dishes on purpose. It does have a really bitter flavor by itself, but it we are trained to like it. Like it actually adds. And so other plants can be like that. One plant we did not mention, I think we should, is rose hip and roses, because those are quite common. Tons of vitamin C in
Yeah.
those. Tons of vitamin C. And the flavor is great. So there, and like I said, so many of the herbs that you cook with are nutritive and they have powerful medicinal properties. We just need to think about getting more of those live herbs into our dishes, actually cooking with some fresh rosemary or sage or thyme, or so many other of the herbs that we can use can be really, really lovely, and they're additive. So I think that's super important, and starting to taste your medicine is really important, because you can get used to it. Just like my little girl, I started feeding her beef liver when, I don't know, she was like 8 months or something. And she thinks it tastes great. Like she thinks beef liver is delicious. It's the same thing with plants. Your taste buds can adjust over time, and they can learn to love things. And lots of medicine like mint. Oh, we haven't even talked about mint. Mint is totally a medicine, right? But we use it for everything and we don't even think about it. And it's an herb. Like peppermint and things there. It's really good at killing stuff. That's like its job. It's very good at killing infection, killing microbials. Mint is really awesome, but we just take it for granted. So everyone, whether you think you're using plant medicine or not, you totally are. And you can adjust your palate to these other medicines as well.
I want to talk about bitterness for a split second, just because bitterness itself stimulates the liver. And I think that we shy away from bitter flavors. And a lot of people this in the westernized culture have issues with anger and grief. That's how when we cleanse the liver pathways, then we're able to process anger and grief a lot easier. But if we refuse to experience bitterness, then we're not going to experience sweetness in the same way. So we need more sweetness to like get that hit of really tasting the sweetness. When we incorporate bitter flavors, we not only stimulate the liver, but we also kind of bring down the need for sweet level in order for it to register as sweet. So that's one caveat on, like, if you don't like bitter flavors, that's okay. Have a little, just have a little, because it's stimulating your liver and it's doing a lot of other good things for you. So that's why
Yeah.
I say about the dandelion greens, like, I don't like eat them anyways.
Eat them
Just do it.
anyways. Well, and there are things, digestive bitters, they're super important. They
Yes.
will solve most people's issues that if you have something like GERD or acid reflux, we're always trying to solve that by giving antacids, which actually exasperates the problem. We
Mm.
really need to be using bitters, and it's because of this lack of bitterness that we are having a lot of our stomach issues when traditionally people knew that you would start before you eat, you would start by taking a bitter. So you start by eating a bitter plant, whether that be sage or dandelion or the peel of an orange or whatever it is. You start with the bitter because, like Jayan said, it takes down your need for sweet. It makes your food taste better, but really it stimulates your stomach and your digestive system and allows it to be ready to digest what is going in your body. So we really need that. And if you're having issues, that's something to really look into. It healed me. That's how I healed. I had an ulcer. That's how I healed my ulcer. That's how I healed my GERD. That's how I healed my acid reflux. Even in pregnancy, I don't have issues with acid reflux because I use digestive bitters, and those bitters stimulate my digestive system and allow it to work properly. So just a plug there for bitterness.
So important. So important. One last thing I want to bring up here is being inspirational when it comes to herbalism rather than let me go and get that specific herb. This is the core basis of things. Herbalism is meant to be the medicine of the people. The medicine of the people is meant to be coming from the land where they live. That is what the point is. It is not about going, oh, I need to go import this thing over here to make me feel better. Because at the end of the day, your health actually comes from where you live. Your food is supposed to come from where you live. So the real question is, okay, I just found out that turmeric is super powerfully anti-inflammatory, blah, blah, blah. Turmeric doesn't grow where I live. It's not native to where I live. How can I find a similar concept close to where I live? Believe it or not, rosemary is powerfully anti-inflammatory. If you take it in a powder, you can do that, and it tastes amazing too. So asking yourself those questions and go, how do I get that in the place where I live? And that brings so much more power into the land where you're living, because you're no longer saying, you can't help me. Earth, where I'm living is not good enough. It has to come from over there. And I think that is a different mentality reset, because everything that we buy comes from over there. Wherever over there is, it's just not from here. And when you bring more of your supportive energetics home, the things that you live on, food, medicine, maybe clothing, whatever, you start to become more grounded, and you start to see, okay, I am also powerful. You start to really cultivate that sense of personal power, because you don't have to rely on lots of other people who you don't even know to get the things that support your life. And I'm not saying, again, don't be a purist, but do ask the question, how can I get this locally, regardless of whatever it is, and what plants are here available for me to support my body and heal?
Yeah, this is so important. It's something I'm really passionate about, but also that we're missing so much because, like you said, most of our food comes from literally thousands of miles away, hundreds of miles, and our food loses its nutrient density with every day that it sits there. So, and I know it sounds crazy to people, which is so funny, but it does. It sounds crazy to be like, eat the food that grows in your region. That's how I know it's
What?
what? Eat it and you'll be healthier. But it really does heal your body. The food that is in your region grows there for a reason. And that reason, it's going to help you. So I'm going to give just one example. Jan gave a great example of rosemary and turmeric and how we can use those things that are a little more indigenous to us. Another one is lomation. So in the US and in herbalism circles, people use golden seal all the time. Golden seal is a very potent herb. It works really well for all kinds of infections, from like bladder infections to acute and chronic infections. So people really highly value golden seal. However, it's over harvested. We use it way too much. And lomation will do all the same things as golden seal, and it is native to the US. It grows in both the Appalachian Mountains and it grows in the Rocky Mountains. It's everywhere, but people regard it less valuable because they see it more as a weed. It's a little more wild. But lomation is a perfect example of something that can do everything golden seal can do, and we don't have to over harvest that golden seal. We can get it close to us. And I mean, if you think about this, it's quite logical. Okay. Everything we're saying, it makes a lot of sense, right? Where like the things that live close to you grow there for a reason, because they're exposed to the same weather and the same stuff you're exposed to. So if you eat the things that have been grown in the same places and the sunlight that you are exposed to, it is going to help you to heal more quickly. It's going to help your body more potently, and it's going to be better for your body because your body is used to that region. Your body is experiencing things in those regions. And believe it or not, plants, because they experience those same things, they're hardier and they pick up the minerals that they need when they're exposed to that kind of weather and everything that's going on, that climate. So plants will arm themselves. Trees do this too, but plants particularly will arm themselves against what's going on in their environment. They'll pick up extra nutrients. They'll do things to make themselves extra hardy. And guess what? You need that because that's what you are being exposed to every day. And so having that stuff that's close to you, eating that produce that's close to you, is not only more nutrient dense, but it's also going to be guarding you against sickness and disease and things like that because it was made for you, for your region. Anyway, I know that's a long way to say this, but people, for some reason, it sounds crazy to eat stuff that grows locally. And I know we're not used to it because it's not always in the grocery store, but it really can make a difference on your health.
Just mic drop. So good. So good. I also see this in like magical things. So one big question, concern, issue is people going, oh, I burn sage bundles, right? For example, sage bundles don't grow where I live at all. And so I went to a farmer's market and this lady was selling mugwort bundles. Mugwort grows everywhere here. Mugwort is a super powerful herb and it makes so much sense to burn mugwort bundles where I live. Can I find those online? No, but you shouldn't really be doing that anyways. But you don't think about that. Like think about what powerful spiritual herbs are nearby that you can use for that kind of thing. Because again, if I'm burning Palo Santo, like it doesn't even grow on my continent. Sage only grows in the Southwest. Like what spirits am I actually calling on if not the local ones? Like that's completely backwards when we're talking especially about using things for spirituality. So am I a purist? No. I also use sage. I also use copal because those are things that I was taught with. I do hold space to make sure that I'm bringing in local herbs, that I'm burning local herbs, and I can grow these spiritually cleansing local herbs in my backyard. So, yes.
And that's the whole point is we always are worried like, oh, there's never going to be another plant that does this, or, there's not this in my area. And at times, perhaps that's a little true, but actually there usually is the same thing in your area that's specific for your area and for your needs. And is probably going to help you more than importing that thing from far away. Although we do get fascinated with that, where we get very fascinated with all these things that are foreign and far away from us, because it's, again, kind of that heroicism thing. Like someone had to go and harvest this from far away, and it's the only plant that could ever heal you from this thing, right? Or have this spiritual property, we get into that kind of heroism mode, but just look around because there are things, and sometimes there may not be something you're used to burning. Let's say if we're doing this for spiritual purposes, there may not be something you're quite as used to burning, but maybe just as potent. Maybe for you, I'm going to use the example of mint because it grows literally everywhere. But if everybody's got mint, mint can be just as potent as sage. Think about it. What is mint's job? It's a guardian. That's its job. Its job is to guard you and to kill the intruders that aren't supposed to be there. So of course, that could be a perfect herb to use in a ceremony because it's indigenous to you as well. So we have to kind of think outside the box, but there's always something beautiful. And again, like Jan said, not a purist. Listen, I'm like in the Costco parking lot right now. Okay. We picked up stuff today that is not indigenous, but it's just about trying to be a little more mindful, trying to bring a little bit more, trying to go to your farmer's market just a little bit to see what you can bring. And if you're having serious problems, thinking about, oh, maybe that is part of my problem, is maybe I do need something that's more local, and kind of getting a little more serious about that might be something that solves your problem. Anyway, I can get off my soapbox now. Anything else, Jan?
I don't know that you can, and I don't know that I can either. This is important stuff. I love it. And what are some of your favorite books that you've learned herbalism from?
I was going to say, we've had Emily Sadler Walker on the podcast before. She is a master herbalist and she lives in Utah. She's amazing. I was able to learn from her in person and I got to wildcraft with her. That was an amazing experience. I bet you in your local area, though, you might not think about it, but I bet you there is an herbalist who does things like that, or a master gardener where you can start to learn. But there are other books if you're into the witchy stuff, like The Green Witch is very accessible and it can be really helpful to you. I also have to recommend, this is a website. Sayer G is the guy who does it. It's called Green Med Info. The reason I love this website is because they've taken and collected all of the studies that have been done on different plants and their uses. Because lots of people will say, oh, there's no studies out there about whatever it is. There's nothing to prove this. And
I know that's code for I haven't been paying attention and I don't care enough to look. So I'm going to say there's nothing.
Exactly. And there are actually tons that show that plants, even though, like we talked about, plants don't work in the same empirical model as well as like something like a drug does, but actually we can see that these plants do have medicinal properties and purposes. And so it's great because it's literally a database of studies all about this. If you want to pull up plants for specific things and chronic things, they put out really great articles all about working with different plants and their uses. And so that's why I really like, and they cite everything. All their sources are cited, which is really lovely. So that's also why I like Green Med Info.
One of my favorites is Susan Weed, spelled Susun. She's an old school herbalist, like hippie from the 60s personality. I'm pretty sure she's eternal, whatever. I also love Rosemary Gladstar. These are people that I learned directly from. Aviva Jill Ram, she is really cool because she was a midwife for decades. And then she wrote a lot of books on herbs for pregnancy. And then she decided to become a medical doctor. So she's now an OBGYN and she serves third world countries in delivering safely with a midwife medical model hybrid. It's really cool. Oh, Stephen Herod Buhner does a lot of plant communication. And then he steps a little bit into the world of we can use plants in the same vein of addressing medicine, like allopathic medicine issues. So he has some protocols for antibiotic resistant bacteria. He has some books on Lyme disease. So stuff that people aren't even touching, which is really cool too. I also love Black Forager on Instagram. She is a wealth of plant knowledge and she's fun and she makes songs. So do that one. I also got an app called Gather, which is supposed to help you identify plants in the wild. I haven't used it a ton, but if you use it and like it, let me know. That's my short list. I'm sure I could tell you like a million other people though.
I love Rosemary Gladstar. She's amazing. All the people that Jan named, a lot of them really are like old hat. People who've been in it forever really mastered it. Yeah, there are a lot of apps out there, and I've tried a few of them, and they'll tell you like, oh, it looks 86% like yarrow. And you're like, okay, is it yarrow or is it Queen Anne's lace? Because that's a real difference. But, there are super helpful apps. There's tons of places you can learn about herbs. It doesn't have to be something that is scary. I know it sounds scary, but there are tons of ways to get started. Even if you do, something simple and look up, YouTube videos, there are lots of amazing people who talk all about working with plants. So that's a good place to start.
I love it. What's one piece of wisdom you want everybody to hear before we sign off about plants?
Don't be afraid to communicate with plants. I think that's what I wanna say. Don't be afraid. You're not crazy. It's okay. I mean, people talk to their animals all the time, and we don't think they're crazy. Plants are also living beings. They are communicating with us. They do want to know you. So don't be afraid to just use your brain and reach out or speak with your mouth, whatever you want to say. But I would just say, start noticing. How do you feel around them? Do you get an answer? What first comes to your mind? And don't doubt those things that come to your mind. They really probably are messages from the plants trying to be your friends. Make sure to reach down to them, because as you reach out to them, they will reach out to you. So that's what I would say. Just start with actually trying to communicate with some plants, and you'll be surprised how it blesses your life.
I love that. I want to say that this whole fear of plants, down to the fear of I can't pick the apples off my own tree and eat them. All of this was created by people a very long time ago who were in power and wanted to prevent people from living. Not like, oh, they're trying to kill people, but they wanted to exploit and export the needs of the people so that they could only be reliant on the system. That's why we struggle to believe that medicine can be in our own backyard. That's why we struggle to believe that food can be in our own backyard. And that's why we struggle to believe that over there can talk to me and help me. So doing this work of reacclimating yourself with your local flora is an act of fighting against the system. So if that motivates you, go talk to your plants.
Amen. I love it, Jan. We could do a whole episode just on that. Maybe one day we will. But amen. It's so beautiful. Reach out to your plants and don't be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. There's medicine all around you.
I love it. All right. Well, everyone have a great week and we will see you next time.